Prime Minister Mackenzie King's first term was not devoid of accomplishments, but he didn't have a very excellent track record to run on. On the other hand, voters didn't seem sufficiently convinced by Arthur Meehan's claims that Mackenzie King wasn't an effective enough prime minister, so they decided to make a split decision, giving the Conservatives the largest number of seats without a parliamentary majority. However, the voters were abandoning the Progressive Party to a significant extent. A total of 245 parliamentarians were elected to the House of Commons in these elections that were held on October the 29th, 1925. The Liberal Conservative Party of Arthur Meehan received 46.1% of the votes, or about 1,454,115 seats. Prime Minister Mackenzie King's Liberal Party received about 39.7% of the vote, or 1,253,100 seats. Interestingly, Mackenzie King lost his bid for re-election in the riding or electoral district of York North. The Progressives, whose leader was then Robert Fork, fell to 8.5% of the vote, or 266,000, and to just 22 seats. However, there were enough progressives still in the Canadian House of Commons to allow Prime Minister King to govern Canada through that so-called confidence, a budget and confidence agreement with the Progressives. However, in late June 1926, newspaper reports revealed that some officials of the Canadian Customs Department had knowingly allowed illegal exportation of alcohol into the United States, which, as we know, back then had the Prohibition Law, a law that officially banned, and even through a constitutional amendment, the recreational drinking of alcohol, which then caused a controversy, a scandal. In order to resolve the political situation, Prime Minister King asked the Governor General, Julian Byng, to dissolve the House of Commons and to call a snap federal parliamentary election. Governor General Byng refused because there were two reasons. King's Liberals did not even have the largest number of seats in the House of Commons, and secondly, the previous parliamentary elections had been held just 8 months earlier. So in Byng's opinion, it would be wiser to invite the official opposition leader, Arthur Meehan, to try to form a new federal cabinet. So this became the so-called King-Byng thing, or King-Byng affair. Mackenzie King resigned and then claimed erroneously that the Governor General had overstepped his constitutional powers by refusing to grant him dissolution of the House of Commons. In fact, King was wrong in this argument. The British North America Act, which was Canada's constitution, would be until the repatriation of constitution in 1982, did allow the Governor General to refuse a dissolution, although that power had very rarely been used anymore in the days of the Confederation. And certainly, I don't think that there had been any previous cases in the early 20th century when the either the Governor General at the federal level or the lieutenant, any of the lieutenant governors at the provincial level would have refused the Prime Minister or the Premier a dissolution. But anyway, King was able to fight the ensuing snap elections on the issues of constitution and Canadian self-government, and then he did gain a sufficient plurality to return to power. Byng would resign as Governor General later that year, Arthur Meehan's political career, for all practical purposes, came to an end, even though in the early 1930s he still was appointed to the Senate by fellow Conservative Prime Minister Richard Bennett. But when he tried to return to the House of Commons in the early 1940s, probably 1943, he was defeated and accordingly resigned. Or 1942 maybe.